and welcome to KnightHunter Books. Today we're bringing you our February wrap-up. We spent most of our month buying books rather than reading them, which we might need to reverse at some point.
My first I picked up at Christmas. It's Nice Dragons Finish Last by Rachel Aaron, who also writes as Rachel Bach when she's writing science fiction. This was roughly what I was expecting. A pretty light, very fast-paced read that was pretty much fun from beginning to end. It follows the youngest member of a dragon clan who gets restricted to his human form and ditched in the only city in the world where dragons are illegal and killed on sight in order to make his mark and stop being an embarrassment to his clan. And there's bigger plottier machinations going on in the background that he is going to stumble into. It's the start of a series, and I will almost certainly pick up the next one.
The first book I read was An Unkindness of Ghosts by River Solomon, which I actually picked up hoping I might read it really quickly and be able to nominate it for the BookTube SFF Awards as a debut author. Unfortunately, I didn't find it quite the fast-paced book I was hoping it was going to be. This book has an absolutely fascinating setup. It's set on a generation ship, which is kind of used as a metaphor for the antebellum South, where people are separated by decks and social class, where the black population typically work in the lowest jobs and are essentially slaves in a theocracy. The characters are really something I haven't read before. You've got both of the kind of main characters as being gender queer in some way, and I really loved those characters and I wanted to know a bit more about them, but I feel like this book might have tried to do too much in not enough pages, and that the whole didn't really feel like it was more than the sum of its parts. I liked the components that went into this book, but as a whole it didn't really work for me. I think there's certainly some elements of the writing where it felt quite choppy. It would kind of just reach the crescendo of some action and then just stop a new chapter and time will have passed and I'd just get a bit disorientated. And while I really loved those characters, I didn't feel like they were given the time and space to develop their relationship and actually have those conversations that I really wanted them to, and the resolution as well at the end. So I rated this 3.5 stars. I found it frustrating in some ways because I felt like I was so expecting to love it. So I think I might read more of her books, or certainly check out the reviews if she writes more, because this is her debut work, in the hope that
She stops throwing everything at the wall.
yeah, maybe. But this might actually be better for someone who hasn't read very much sci-fi. The plot kind of felt like it wasn't very driven by the characters, it was just a lot of stuff just kind of happened. And this is quite dark in places, but I felt like that suited what the book was trying to do and did feel appropriate. It's quite nice to read a book that I'm rating kind of in the middle, that's non-meh. I have some extremely strong feelings about this in both directions. I'm not really sure whether to recommend this. Up to you.
My next is Black Panther, A Nation Under Our Feet by Ta-Nahesi Coates and Brian Stelfreeze. This collects the first 4 singles in Ta-Nahesi Coates' run on Black Panther, and I will be continuing with this. I think it was really interesting. I don't read a lot of Supers comics at all, but what I think is interesting here is that they're grappling with the thing that makes Black Panther different to a lot of Supers. He's not just a vigilante out punching crooks, he's a king. He is attempting to rule a country with effectively sort of divine right and absolute power, and trying to deal with both threats to his crown and threats to his country, and trying to balance all that and his people's respect. One thing I would say is it also includes the first appearance of Black Panther in the Fantastic Four. Oh boy, comics have come on a long way.
You say it's the sort of thing someone could read without reading any other Marvel, or?
I'm missing maybe a little bit of context. Maybe I'd understand it a little better if I'd had that context, but I don't think it's required by any means.
The graphic novel I read this month is Odyssey, Volume 1 Off to Far Ithaca. by Matt Fraction and Christian Ward. And I have to admit, this is the second time picking this up, because I did pick it up once about a year ago and had to put it back down again pretty quickly. I usually reach for graphic novels when I want something light and easy, and this is not that. This time, I knew that was what I was getting myself in for, and actually, yeah, I quite enjoyed it. I was kind of worried that I'd hate it, but I rated it 3.5 stars. This is a retelling of Homer's Odyssey in graphic novel form, set in some kind of crazy future universe.
With a heavy dose of psychedelia.
Yes, very psychedelic. You've still got all the kind of Greek gods. It's also gender flipped.
The universe is almost entirely populated by women.
I have to show you the art for this because I loved the art so much. This is what we mean by psychedelic. The colours are just incredible.
You can imagine this being the tie-in graphic novel series to a concept album of 70s prog rock.
Yes, and I love 70s prog rock, even when I didn't understand what the lyrics were on about. So this kind of falls into that kind of... I think I got...
It's that aesthetic.
Yeah, I got the feel of the graphic novel, even if I didn't always understand what was going on. I think the language used is, in a lot of places, quite similar to the Odyssey, but then also has a load of sci-fi terms. It also then made it less accessible. I might continue, I'm not sure at the moment, but I liked it more than I expected to. And it's certainly doing something a bit different with graphic novels. If I had to study Homer's Odyssey in school, I would definitely want to pick this up at the same time. They're probably equally impenetrable, but for different ways.
My next one is Binti Home by Nnedi Okorafor. This follows the continuing adventures of Binti. She's the first of her people to go to, effectively, Space Uni. This is her first visit home, which doesn't involve getting a load of washing done. I love the world of the Binti novellas, both sort of Earth and the aliens. It's a fascinating, well-drawn universe. I really struggle with the format of these. I honestly think that these might have worked better just sticking them all together and reading them as a novel. There's quite a long bit at the beginning which doesn't add a lot to the plot, but clearly displays the fact that she's dealing with PTSD and, you know, actually going through the dramatic events of the first novella have changed her and had some impact, which is really nice because often, you know, you see protagonists who see people slaughtered around them who just brush themselves off and carry on. It's like, no, unless they're a sociopath, that's going to break them. However, it was quite a lot of the sort of length of the fairly chunky novella.
I think I remember finding it a bit jumpy, so I think I found the same. And I remember really liking this once you got kind of past the halfway and properly into what was going on at home.
Mm.
But because it's trying to bridge between the end of the first one and this one...
To some extent, it makes you realise why protagonists normally do just brush themselves off and carry on. It makes for a more continuous story. That said, I will carry on reading them.
And then the last thing I read this month is another non-fiction book. What's going on? Who am I? What have I done with myself? It doesn't really work in that way.
Who are you and what have you done with my wife?
Yes, thank you. This is Eating Animals by Jonathan Safran Foer. For anyone who doesn't recognise that name, Jonathan Safran Foer mostly writes literary /
stunt fiction.
Occasionally stunt fiction. His most famous books are Extremely Loud and Incredibly Close and Everything is Illuminated. And I've read most of his fiction books and absolutely loved them. So even though I'm not usually sure about non-fiction, I decided I wanted to give this a go because knowing that you like the author's writing style is, I think, a good way to start. Also, this is a topic that I have been quite interested in at the moment. I tried Veganuary, sort of, where you go vegan for a month. So this very much was the right book at the right time for me. And I rated it 4.5 stars. I just loved this. This was perfect. This is very much about the quandary of should we eat animals, but it isn't just one-sided, no you should not. That would not make a very interesting book. The author is trying to explore this himself, so at the start of the book then he's not sure where he falls, and he's also raising a very young son, so that drives a lot of his quest for trying to understand the moral implications. And the fact that this was a really personal journey for him, I really liked. I felt like I was brought along with it. He talks to a lot of people in the farming industry, including just having kind of short chapters exclusively written by those people, which was really interesting in format and kind of kept me on the edge of my seat. But you also get to hear other people's points of view, so you could come away from this book with different opinions to him. He gives you all the information to make your own decision. I also, I cried in this book, but not because I felt really sorry for animals, but because, there's this turkey farmer, and I'm getting choked up now, and he's so lovely. And, this book, really emotionally affected me. You will find a lot about where your food comes from, so don't be surprised. This does include some gory details on factory farming. It's not just about that, it also talks about the ecological and environmental kind of wider impacts of what goes on.
To be fair, his writing style is not for everybody.
It was very diluted in this, so you didn't get along with his fiction because it is very weird.
Yeah, it's like pulling teeth trying to finish that book, if I remember.
I like it because it's kind of lyrical, poetic. It is not as poetic in this. It did kind of appear when he was talking a little more kind of philosophically. Would highly recommend if any of that interests you in the slightest. Although, if you haven't read his other books, then maybe just read the first chapter and see how you get along with it.
My last one is Iain Banks' The Bridge, which I've had on my to-read pile forever. Not since this edition was published, this is secondhand.
See our 2018 resolutions video for how we're trying to actually either read or get rid of any book that we got before 2010, I think.
In retrospect, I should have DNF'd this, which I believe I said repeatedly whilst reading it, and yet continued struggling on. It's not real. It tells you on the back of the book. It's some guy's dream while he's in a coma.
You mean, it's not just fiction?
Oh, yeah, no. Even in the world of the fiction, it's a further layer of fiction. This guy has a crash on a bridge and ends up in this bureaucratic nightmare. It feels a bit steampunky.
You describing this book definitely made me think of the BBC series Life on Mars.
It's meandering, it's kind of vague. Honestly, nothing much really happens. You do get to see snippets of the guy's real life, which is contemporary to the era of the novel, which is why it's Iain Banks and not Iain M. Banks. There's a reason I don't read literary fiction. I think the continual naming of car models is supposed to ground it and let you know what era he's talking about, but to me, basically, there could have just been replaced by square brackets car model, and it would have meant as much. Yeah, this is going in the charity pile unless you want it.
No. So those are all the books that we read in February. Some highs, some lows, some in between. If you've read any of these and have any thoughts, let us know. I'd be really interested if anyone's got any more vegetarian-themed books, because I'm on a bit of a kick at the moment. Thank you for watching. We'll see you again soon.